Hey YouTube, it's Rob from RP Model Railroads, and in this video I'm going to be doing a review of this TYCO Illinois Central Gulf, or ICG, ALCO C630, number 1102. Now, TYCO produced many different ICG C630s, and they're all pretty popular. But this particular version is actually quite scarce, and I'll get to that in just a moment. It is stock number 243A, which is actually interesting that this stock number is still on here. And pretty sure that this is probably the original box for the locomotive. The foam insert fits perfectly. There is a slit on the back of the box here, so it's not perfect, but it's in pretty decent shape for its age, considering how old this is. Now, a little bit of backstory. This particular locomotive, stock number 243A, was first introduced by TYCO in 1974, and then remained in production under the same stock number until 1975. What makes this ICG C630 so special is the drive chassis underneath the shell. It is not the typical power torque Vampire 3-axle truck that TYCO used for most of their C630s. This is actually the first drivetrain that TYCO introduced for their C630s when they first introduced the model back in the early 1970s, and it is very reliable. Could perhaps be the most reliable TYCO locomotive ever. So let's get to unboxing this thing and see what it looks like. Very carefully pull it out of its a little bit mangled box there. I really don't want to mess it up anymore. I'm going to set that back there carefully. And see if we can't pop this right out of there. Just real quick about the foam insert before we get to the locomotive. It seems to be, obviously, there's some signs of rust there, or possibly oil corrosion. And I like that the operating headlight is actually still preserved. That little sticker is still preserved on the foam insert. Pretty cool. And it seems to be that it also came with a pack of handrails. Probably the original handrails that came with it, or maybe somebody installed or put these into the box. They're falling out there, but it seems to be that the handrail kit's still there, which is pretty good. And here we have it. So, man, this thing is nice. This is actually my first time looking at it out of the box with you guys, so I'm just completely stunned by this locomotive. So again, what makes this locomotive so special is that it features TYCO's unique 3-axle, actually prototypical truck covers as well, but 3-axle chassis that is very greatly resembles something from Rivarossi at the time. You can see it's got the spin motor in here. It's got these gears here that go to both wheels. And something interesting about this is that it says even on the bottom, if I can get the camera to focus, doesn't seem to want to focus, but it says at the bottom, made by TYCO in Hong Kong, which is actually pretty interesting. Considering that this is actually something that, a drivetrain that Rivarossi used on some of their GE U-boats of the same era. Then if we look here it says as well, actually it's printed upside down, let me turn it around. Made by TYCO in Hong Kong is also on this weight, which that is another thing to mention. This entire thing is a chassis that pulls out from the bottom of the locomotive, which is actually pretty interesting, pretty unique, including the weight cover itself, which makes this pretty unique. Again, very unique locomotive. Now, I can't wait to get this thing on the tracks and start running it, but one other thing I'm seeing so far is it seems to be that this plastic insert piece is popping out inside, so I'm going to pop the shell off, see if I can't fix that stuff, and at the same time, we'll see if we can't take a look at the guts underneath this locomotive shell. Let me see if I can pop it off very carefully here. Okay, so now that I got this chassis out from underneath the shell, which was not easy to do, but was one interesting thing I do want to mention real quick is that both of these coupler housings, unlike some of the later TYCO Power Torque designs, they actually didn't break off, they popped off. If I can show the tabs here at the bottom, it seems to be that it would, or both of these actually snapped in right here. This is actually very effective for, A, not breaking these things off in the case of a train accident or something, but also when you need to take the shell off, like myself, it's actually very difficult. These things pop right out, and then it's very easy to get the shell off. But the inside of this is completely bizarre. It's pretty much, you know, pretty identical to something that Rivarossi would have done on some of their locomotives, as many people have previously mentioned. But just looking at this and seeing that it's got TYCO branding on it and TYCO designing, it's pretty interesting. TYCO definitely did some copy work here, or they definitely used some of Rivarossi/AHM parts to make this thing. Pretty incredible. But what I want to see before I put the shell back on is exactly how this drivetrain works. And then once I do that, put the shell back on, and then for the rest of the video, we'll be able to enjoy this ICG TYCO/Rivarossi C630 running around Retro TYCO. So stay tuned. Alright, so this thing runs absolutely amazing, which isn't a surprise because a lot of AHM and Rivarossi products run really well, so this collaboration project between TYCO and Rivarossi really paid off. But before I put the shell back on, one last time I'm going to say this, I'm going to lubricate all of the gears and joints so that hopefully this will stop. I'll also check the contact wheels to see if any of the contacts are a little bit dirty. And then we'll pop the shell back on, and I'll probably hop on real quick to give you guys another synopsis. And then I'll see how many cars that this TYCO C630 can haul. Alright, so after being freshly lubed, you can still hear a growl sound coming from the motor, which is typical of old AHM and Rivarossi diesels. It's just amazing to see and hear the sound coming out of a TYCO shell, TYCO C630 shell. Again, really, you know, it's unfortunate that TYCO didn't continue producing their C630s with the Rivarossi drive, because if they did, they would have had a very powerful, probably very successful ALCO C630 for their product line, because unfortunately the power torque motors of the later years, even though they were powerful, unfortunately had their flaws, and as we all know, pinion gear problems, traction tire problems, etc., that would plague all power torques, especially the C630s. But if you can find one of these locomotives with the Rivarossi drive, you will probably have the most powerful and the most reliable TYCO diesel locomotive, with exception to the MU2 GP20s and F9s, of course. So I'm just super happy to have this in my collection, and for the rest of the video, enjoy this rare ICG TYCO/Rivarossi diesel locomotive running around the layout, hauling as many cars as it possibly can handle.